Okay, welcome to class. So before we start going into lesson today, we're going to do an activity. So I'm going to put you in two groups, and you're going to have Rebecca and Steven will be together. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to look through it, and you're going to categorize each of them into what you think would be an effective learner and what qualities you think wouldn't be an effective learner. So I'm just going to give you guys about 3 minutes to do that.
The students' qualities or
Teacher qualities.
Impatient.
Bad.
Bad.
These are all good ones.
You do. Bad.
Actually, maybe this is weird.
Yes.
Cool. Nah.
Man,
Once
it's
you
bad.
got it, just let me know.
Okay, got it.
What do
Dunzo.
you think we're done?
Denzel Washington.
Steven and Rebecca,
Oh,
do you have it?
Well, Steven is a little bit.
Quiet.
Jonah, we don't. We're not going to subject
Sorry.
subject
sorry.
any children in my classroom. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
You good? Okay. So, so we'll have group, which one's group one?
We are.
Okay, so we'll have group one share their thoughts and feelings on the qualities, and we'll have group two.
So our bad characteristics are impatient, rude, and unfair.
That makes a really bad teacher. Number one, because impatience, yeah, that's just bad. Rudeness, you need to respect the students or they're not going to confide their questions. They're not going to ask you anything because they're going to be worried about your rudeness, and then you're not going to be helping them learn, which defeats the purpose of teaching. And unfair, which could fall into like the same category. And your integrity is on the line. You gotta be fair.
That's true.
And I'm just gonna name a couple of ones. That's the positive ones. Being prepared, always a good thing. That helps with like knowing your materials, and the kids are more likely to listen to you. Being aware of if the kids are understanding or if they're not, that also is a good one. So those are some of the positive ones.
Yeah. There's also like good management skills. You have to be able to tell students when they're disrespectful and you have to be aware. Did you say that?
Yeah, caring.
Caring. You have to be caring.
That's good. Group two?
I have positive and hardworking for good ones, and angry, impatient, lazy, and bossy for sort of not as good. But we can still use them to our advantage as teachers, I think. We could take, bossy and turn it into something good, right? Like, I'm not in a bad way, but even just using a little bit, like being just a tiny bit bossy, would kind of work, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that.
Because if I was super nice and positive, but if I have a little bossy, like, okay, get home done, I think it would work. And same with like lazy, every once in a while, I think, not like lazy, but if the students are working extremely hard, to just give them a break or something.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of teachers, like when they become a teacher, what they want to do is just like be the boss and have control of everything. That their teachers are like, this is like listening to my mom and dad, like, or this is like listening to something I don't like, so I'm not going to listen to you, and it makes it harder to teach them. So that was good. So why do you think we did this activity?
So we can decide what characteristics we want to be an effective teacher.
Good. So even though we don't know a lot yet about being an effective teacher, we can see like through the qualities what it takes to be an effective teacher. And I'm sure we've all had like effective teachers that we really liked and that they really helped us. So today's outcome after doing that fun activity is Jonah, read it.
Learn how to identify the characteristics of being an effective teacher.
Awesome. Good job. So basically there are three characteristics, like three main characteristics that it takes to be an effective teacher, sorry. And so the first one, Chelsea, can you read the first one?
Has positive expectations for student success.
So how do you feel, like, why do you think that's one of the important characteristics for a teacher?
Because you have to have high expectations that they can achieve. You have to have like goals in mind, or else you're not really shooting for anything. It's hard to learn.
That's good. Rebecca, can you read number two?
Is an extremely good classroom manager.
Okay, and why do you think that that is one of the characteristics of being an effective teacher?
Because in order to be an effective teacher, you have to be able to control your classroom and be in control.
And Steven, number three, Steven.
Knows how to design lessons for student memory.
One more time, Steven.
Knows how to design lessons for student memory.
Awesome. Why do you think this is an important characteristic, Steven?
Because, well, if the teacher doesn't understand that the students are going to have to be learning this, if the teacher's worried about covering material, or like doesn't know how to help students remember, then the students are going to be left in the dust, and yeah, that's no good.
Awesome, Steven. So basically, there are three topics, and they go against the three characteristics. So the first one is positive expectations. So when you want to be an effective teacher, it's good to have positive expectations in your classroom, because if you're just thinking about all the negatives and nothing good, of course, is going to come out of it. And so the most important thing when having positive expectations is research, because you have to research each student in your class. So if you have kids in your class who are below average, average learners, or more slower learners, it's going to be, it's better if you transmit the things you're teaching according to their level of learning. Does that make sense? So if you have like a high learner or above average learner, transmitting things to them the way they learn makes it easier for them to learn, if that makes sense. And also, too, that the most essential thing when having positive expectations is treating your students positively. It's like number one. And I've like seen teachers, for example, I've had a teacher that was teaching a child that didn't speak the same language as her, and she's getting really frustrated, and she marked him as below average, but he was actually an above average child. But since he had that language barrier, she deemed him as a below average, and she just treated him like that. So he just believed that he was like that. So if you just like treat your students positively, then they're going to think that they can do it, and they should always think they're going to do better. You should never be in your class, and they should never have a student think that they're going to do below. So that's the first one for characteristics. The second one would be classroom management, and of course that's really important because now today in the United States, I don't know about other countries, but when I was researching it, the United States has about 30 kids in one classroom, as to where they used to have like 20 and below. It's because there's not a lot of people who want to be teachers anymore, just based on the certain things that they have to do. And so basically with classroom management, you need to create a well-environment, like a well-enriched environment when you have a huge classroom like that, because you have 30 students. It's way harder to get everyone's attention, especially based on the level or the age you're teaching. Like if you have 30 kindergartners, then it's going to be really hard to teach 30 of them, because I was teaching like 25 and I could barely get them to sit down, so it's just like really hard. Have you guys ever been in a class where you had a teacher who can't manage your classroom, or you've seen like can't control it? Substitutes? It's true. Anybody else?
Definitely substitutes. Like in high school, especially substitutes.
Yeah.
I feel like you didn't learn a single thing that day, and there was just a free period of talking with everybody.
I had a teacher
Exactly.
once that would, we had a guy in our class, this was in junior college, who obviously had like a behavioral disorder of some kind, and she didn't understand anything about that, and he would just like make comments that weren't exactly on topic, and she was trying to like control, like, I don't know, like condition him using public humiliation as like, oh, you need to go back to high school. Except for then he would just act up even more and more, and she was just like villainizing herself, and it was a catastrophe.
I feel like that's really true with substitutes, because in high school, like when I went to class, I was like, oh yeah, substitute, we don't have to do anything, which that should never be the case. When a substitute comes, first of all, their substitutes should be hired according to like the level of knowledge they have in that course, because a lot of times substitutes are just hired. Some teachers, they get sick, and then you have like 3 hours to find a teacher. You can't just find a math teacher in 3 hours. It's hardly possible. So it's like some substitutes don't even know what they're doing, so it's like harder to manage the classroom, especially when they're not even a substitute. So say you have your cousin come in and teach your class, it's going to be a lot harder for them to teach the class, or this kids to be managed, because you're not even a teacher. So we really don't have to listen to you.
Plus, a good teacher, an effective teacher that's a good classroom manager will have established routines and procedures so that when a substitute comes in, at least the kids know what they should be doing, and they will have written good substitute plans.
Yeah.
Now, you're right, there are some substitutes, doesn't matter what the teacher does, is still going to not be effective, but that really helps substitutes at least.
So with that, last Friday, or the Friday before last Friday, there was a substitute teacher when I was doing the service learning, and like you could tell that the teacher's lesson plan was really specific as to what to do. Like they were all playing and everything, and she's like, will you turn on that CD player to track 9, and like the second I turned it on, all the kids were up cleaning up. They knew that that was their cleanup song. So like that's exactly what he was just saying, is if the teacher establishes it, that's first of all, that's good classroom management, but then it puts the students in situations where even if the teacher is not there, they're still able to be manageable.
That's important too, because also treat the same sub constantly, that the kids are going to get used to that sub. When I was teaching in Lane Elementary, there was a sub, and the kids automatically knew her, so she had an easier time managing the classroom rather than being first time learner. And also too, substitute planning, when the teacher plans out their substitutions, it's a lot more detailed when they're younger, but when they get in high school, it's just like give them a worksheet, because there's different things every day. Yeah, whereas like little kids are, you have to say the weather, you say the Pledge of Allegiance, they're like used to having a routine, whereas high school students are just like worksheet or what are we doing today.
Yeah, a lot of it too is like your community, because like here, where everyone's really close to everybody, you know, like that's different than somewhere else where there's so many people that you'll never remember the sub's name, or you know, stuff like that, where like you were just saying how the sub was common enough that the kids knew.
Yeah, the sub might know
Yeah.
the kid's mom
The most-
or auntie or something.
Common thing with subs too is not for little kids because they don't know this, but bigger, like older kids like high school, middle school, is my teacher doesn't do that. They try to pull the my teacher doesn't do that. Oh, we don't do this. My teacher said this, and it's even more frustrating because then they're trying. The whole class is going to go along with the child, not you. So that's what's more frustrating is in high school I used to do this all the time. My teacher never said to do that, and we just argued for about 30 minutes until someone got sent out of the class. So that's like a big thing with subs. They might have a really great lesson plan, but if the children don't even want to listen to the lesson plan, it's still hard to manage it. So you have to find a way to be like, oh, okay, your teacher said that. Okay, well, maybe we can just adjust it this way. But still then you're not really, it's not really good to do that, but it's better than fighting with a child for 30 minutes. So there are ways that subs have to adjust better in that kind of thing, if it makes sense. And so, like I said, the effectiveness of the environment will depend on how well your students are learning. So that's number 2 for classroom management. Okay, then number 3 is lesson mastery. Okay, this is very important since we're all learning how to give lessons right now. It's super important to master your lessons. And it's okay to adjust your lessons. Like some teachers have to go by the book, by the book, by the book. But if you think of a, if you think that you have a better idea than what you wrote, because sometimes we write things and we're like, oh, like I have a better idea. Like I did this all the time in high school with giving talks and stuff like that. It's just like, if you have a better idea, then use it. Like don't be afraid to change your lesson plan. Some people, like some teachers, you can tell they're up there and they forget what to do and they're stressing out because they don't know if they should change it or not. But you can change your lesson plan. You just want to master it as best as you can. And I mean, the first year you're teaching, you're constantly reviewing your lesson plans, making new ones, seeing what works and what doesn't work. But then as you know, like time goes on and you start to teach more, you won't really have to write lesson plans unless you switch another grade. Like if you're consistently in the same grade, then lesson plans, you can just keep them and do the same thing over and over again. Does that make sense? But add new things as the years, you know what I mean? Like, you can do that. Have any of you had like a teacher that you've seen them like been really good at mastering their lessons, or like have an example of where anything about lesson mastery? Or maybe what we could do to make our lessons better.
I remember I had an institute teacher who he knew his lessons inside out and backwards and upside down, and it didn't really matter like what happened, where the conversation went. He knew how to ask questions, pointed questions, so that the kid could figure out the answer for himself. And then he knew how to tie it perfectly back to the topic where we were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had an AP teacher, 2 AP teachers. The first one knew her lessons really well, and we like had a lot of fun because she knew it so well. And then one where they didn't even know what they were talking about, like they were reading from the book. So it's kind of like, how do you have confidence in your teacher if they don't know what they're teaching, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I had like my psychology teacher that would just read the book to you the whole time, and it was like a waste of time for you to be in class. So that was him not planning the lesson.
It's making sense. Yeah, it says here that mastery refers to how well a student can demonstrate a concept that has been comprehended or perform a skill at a level of proficiency as determined by the teacher. So basically, your kids are going to take their knowledge as best as you provide to them. So I've seen some students basically sit in a class for a whole semester and learn not one thing. Learn not.
Yeah, my brother got out of high school, a year of high school Spanish when I got home from our mission, and he did not understand like anything past hola. Hello is
Yeah, and it kind of discourages the kids, like putting it in a religious kind of view. I had a friend who served a mission, and her mission was Spanish speaking, but when she came home, she couldn't speak Spanish. She could speak it on her mission, but she couldn't speak it when she got home, and it was really discouraging to her because not that she didn't learn it, but the person who was teaching it to her didn't like do a very good job. And so it kind of just same with teaching, it discourages the children because like you were in that class, why didn't you learn anything? And they feel like, you know, like I'm not really smart enough to learn anything. So that's why you really have to be like aggressive with planning good lessons and mastering your lessons. So that is the 3 characteristics and 3 topics in the chapter that we're talking about how to be an effective teacher. And so now we're going to there's 2 groups. So we'll do one big group for this one. So each of you will have a paper since there's 3 of you. Sorry, Stephen has to go home early, he's sick. And basically you're going to take a sheet of paper and you're going to draw each characteristic. So what you think. So Rebecca can be 1, Jonah 2, and then Chelsea 3. And then just draw it as best as you can. You guys have 10 minutes. And then we're going to describe it. So make like a scene, okay, using your characteristic. Okay?
Okay.
Awesome. Love this class. So enthusiastic. Is everyone having like an okay time with drawing?
Yeah,
Okay, awesome. Just making sure.
it's my favorite.
Awesome. Rebecca, I like yours. I'm not good at drawing. So maybe about 5 to 4 more minutes to draw. You done?
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up the drawings as fast as we can. Good job, sorry. Jenny, you almost done?
Yeah, almost.
Yours looks like raw artist or something. Awesome. So, Chelsea, you're number 3. Who has number 1? Are you ready? Okay, so come to the front of the class and okay, no.
My legs are broken.
Your legs are broken? Okay, well, Rebecca's legs are
You
broken.
could just hang the picture like there.
Okay, yeah. Here, that's good. It's okay, Rebecca. Sorry, as a teacher, I should know not to ask handicapped kids to come to the front. Okay, so explain to me from their broken legs, what's wrong?
Broken.
Well, I basically drew a situation that was kind of negative and then a positive one. And I just wanted to kind of show, the negative one maybe didn't have such good expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so the students went a little crazy. And then the second one, the student had positive expectations of the students and expected them to do good. And so they all listened and remained calm.
Awesome. Jonah,
Okay.
can you come to the front of the classroom, please?
Yes.
Awesome, Jonah. Explain your picture.
So here we have a big wave surfer,
Okay.
and I promise it makes sense because just like a surfer has to like paddle to catch the wave. Sometimes you have to go fast. Sometimes you have to wait for the wave to catch up. Sometimes you have to just like stop paddling and slide along for a little bit before you stand up. So that is like classroom management, because sometimes a teacher has to like be assertive and like paddle hard and like lay down the law, rule with an iron fist. You're not so much that, but sometimes. And sometimes the teacher has to just like let a kid, for example, I don't know, be angry for a second, and just to help the student, just let it slide for a little bit before the teacher does anything, just like that happens. Sometimes when you're surfing, there's bumps in the water, and like it throws you off balance a little bit, and then you have to like change your course a little bit so that you don't fall off, and that's like in-flight adjustments. Because when you're teaching, I don't know, maybe someone has broken legs and can't come up, then it throws you off a little bit, but you're like, okay, I'll just hold it for you, and then you can present from down there.
Awesome. It's good. It's like a different kind of view. I like it. Very good. Good job, Jonah. We're not playing enough. Okay, Chelsea.
Alright. Mine was on the third one. So I drew this teacher who has a really good lesson plan on dinosaurs, and he's super prepared with hands-on activities of fossils, and the kids are like, oh, I love this lesson, and they're just pumped. 'cause it's
Awesome.
a good one.
Love dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So that was really good. And now we can can better know how to be an effective teacher for our classroom with these 3 characteristics